Welcome to Dog Life Radio.
All right, I am back. This is Rossi Jujo. I am your host of Dog Life Radio. Thank you so much for hanging in there. I had myself a little bit of a hiatus, took a little bit of time off, but now I am back and ready to go with episode 51, jumping right back into the swing of things. So we will make this short and sweet. Do a little bit of an intro of my special guest. Today I have got Justin Andrews all teed up and ready for you. Justin is one of the co-hosts of an awesome podcast called Mind Pump. You must have heard me talk about them in the past, as I have referenced their show as one of the podcasts you should be listening to. I enjoy it. Justin's on there with Sal and Adam, the three hosts of the show. They do a really good job of kind of making things light and fun as well as educational. So they do get a little bit sciencey, but nothing too deep where you really need to start looking up words and Googling shit. They keep it applicable to the everyman, the every woman. I really like their stuff. You can check them out. The podcast, again, is called Mind Pump. Their website, mindpumpmedia.com. And all three of those guys all have the same type of handle on Instagram. Mind Pump Justin, Mind Pump Adam, Mind Pump Sal. Check them out. And then also the show is Mind Pump Media, also on Instagram. So without further ado, here they come, or actually here just Justin comes, but believe me, it was a great show. I had an awesome conversation with him. Hope you enjoy it. Here it comes.
All right, we're live. The tape is rolling. This is Rossi. I'm here with Justin from Mind Pump. How's it going?
Good. Good to be on here.
All right. Well, thanks again for taking time out of your busy day and joining me here. I like I was saying before, this is really cool for me because I'm a huge fan of your podcast. Listen to it all the time, have been listening to it for a long time as well. So I finally wanted to pick your brain on a couple of things.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, thanks for listening, man.
All right. So for those of you who don't know, Mind Pump, Raw Fitness Truth, you guys put out a ton of content. Meaning it's not like a once a week or once every other week type of a show. How do you get your ideas for your shows, and how did you land on your frequency for how often you're putting out the episodes?
Yeah, that was kind of something that we figured out along the way. When we first started, we really didn't know what the hell we were doing. And this is kind of a funny thing that we figured out the formula over the last 3 years or so, based off of a lot of feedback from fans and from people that have really provided good feedback within our forum and you know, the community that has kind of helped to request different subject matter from us, and just a lot of our Q&As have really been kind of how we've structured the way that we provide content on the show. And that was kind of a unique thing. I mean, Q&A isn't really a unique concept, but we just found that people got the most value out of those types of episodes where we were addressing very specific questions that were geared around subjects that we all had experience with, and people actually responded and listened to those shows more. So, you know, this has been trial and error, just really kind of coming up with the format of the show. We all came from just personal training background and running gyms, and the whole media and entertainment side of things is this brand new horizon for us. And so that's just been something that has been, you know, a repetition thing for us. And it's kind of funny because the way that we approach, you know, the cadence of the shows and things like that just kind of naturally happened because there was just so much to cover. There's just so many things out there that we had conversations day to day with our clients about that we thought would bring people value, and people would be able to like understand further. And that's really the goal of the show, is to just really to bring light to sound practices within health and fitness, that people just aren't getting this type of information. And we found that's our niche, is just to kind of be able to have a platform where we describe in full detail more of some of the pitfalls and other things to modalities and nutrition practices out there that people just really aren't considering. So, to answer your question, it's mainly just been trial and error, and we've just slowly ramped up the amount of episodes that we drop per week to where we do about 5, a week, which not a lot of podcasts out there do that. And we have 3 hosts, so I think that's part of the sauce, is that we can kind of have round-robin discussions between the 3 of us to keep the show kind of going forward. And then also the fans providing those questions really provides a lot of content for us to discuss as well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with the way you were describing it. You've got this really healthy balance between, the Q&A and even in the beginnings of your shows, where you've got the banter where you're talking about something and you just kind of, this is what's been going on. I thought this was an interesting anecdote or story, and then diving into I think just the right level of science with it, because I think the way that you were describing your topics is you're hitting things that every person can learn something from, and it's not in a way that you have to go back and listen to the podcast 5 times to figure out what you're saying. Because sometimes you can get very sciencey when it comes to health and fitness, but I think there's just the right level of that, and it makes it interesting, but also something you can learn from.
Yeah, that's great. That's great that you get that from us, because that's really our goal, is to not try to talk over people. And I think that was one of the big lessons we learned in personal training. It's great to have knowledge with anatomy and physiology and be able to break down the sciences to people, so they know that you're valuable, right? So they know that you have an education what you're talking about. However, for it to be relatable and for it to be something that people can really absorb and then apply to their own, personal life, that's really where we needed to come in and check ourselves and filter that process of, well, let's talk in a way where we're considering the person listening and not just talking in this echo chamber between 3 trainers with all that, because we can get into all those acronyms, and we can get into all those like specific terms that maybe we all understand, but to be able to kind of pull ourselves out of that and be more simplistic and present it in a way that's more digestible was the goal for us. So we're not like, if you're trying to listen to our show, we're definitely not. There's other podcasts out there and other professionals out there that are putting out really heavy content that's filled with scientific data and research and study, which we love listening to. But at the same time, we know that's not really mainstream in terms of, like, I can't get my parents to listen to that or my friends, because they're just not interested in going that deep. So I think a lot, so Sal is great because he almost has a photographic memory in terms of like memorizing all these studies and what's articles that he's read. So it's great because we all share these articles, these studies. We try and stay current as possible with trends in health and fitness, and to bring that content to the show is something that we all make sure that's a big focus. But then we try really hard to then distill that information and bring it and present it in a way and communicate it in a way where it's a little bit more relatable to your average person. So that's definitely a distinction with our show versus another fitness podcast that's very much more high level of assuming that you're already a professional in the industry or you're already a trainer and you're going to understand these concepts right away.
Yeah, it's a podcast, a show for everybody, where you're getting at it that way. Now, you had mentioned Sal. Do you want to, but we can kind of take a step backward and kind of go, how did you meet up with these guys? Because there's the three of you. And how did you kind of come up with the idea of, hey, let's do this podcast?
Yeah. So Adam is the other host on the show, and I actually met him first. I went to college out in Chicago, came back, was looking for work, and how to apply my degree. And I kind of stumbled upon personal training, and at 24 Hour Fitness they were hiring, and I actually ended up working for him first, and he was my manager for a couple years, and was under him, and then all these other trainers at the time that he had hired that were stellar trainers. I mean, they were trainers that really helped to kind of mentor my process, because the thing with me was, I had a decent amount of background in terms of from academic, from classes that I took in college for kinesiology, and so I had a pretty good base and a background knowledge in fitness and in training. However, I had never really applied it, and so this was a whole new territory for me to kind of start over and now figure myself out and how to communicate better to clients, and so that was a struggle for me. But that Adam was really like essential for me to learn how to better communicate that, and then also sell myself and figure out how to turn that into a career and a business. And so I had a good relationship with him over the years. Then we parted ways. I started training on my own and created my own business, and had my own training business for about 3 or 4 years. We reconnected later once Adam left 24 Hour Fitness, and just knew that we worked well together. I was his assistant manager, and then was kind of waiting for my own club to then manage, and that was just one of those things. I just was over it. The corporate environment just wasn't a fit for me. I was out. So I left, but still like really enjoyed working with Adam. So we reconnected, and then together we're just like, what can we do? And we started out actually trying to make an app, because that was new at the time, and fitness had this opportunity out there within like making these fitness apps that were you could put your program on it, and people could download it, and so I knew nothing about that world. I just kind of jumped right in and invested in the process, and we totally got burned in that process. But Adam and I both learned a lot from that experience. However, we created a lot of content together, and meanwhile, people from the 24-hour fitness world had mentioned Sal to us, and had always mentioned to Adam that it was like, man, you guys have to meet. Like, you guys are pretty much like the same person. And it's pretty funny, because at the time, they are the same person. I mean, in terms of like personality and charisma and all that kind of stuff, like they have a very similar delivery and like enthusiasm. And it was pretty weird when we all finally met, and then that's where I met Doug too. We just decided, like, hey, we've heard a lot about each other and what we've done in the company, and we've all kind of had this background in sales where we were top in sales, and we saw each other's names, for like being number one in the company and doing all these types of things. And so we just met, and we're like, man, well, we should probably do something. And at the time, Sal was creating Maps Anabolic with Doug, which is one of our first programs that we put out, years later. But yeah, it was one of those things where we all just kind of met, and we're like, wow, we have so much in common, and we see so much of the same, things out there that we need to do something. We need to get this information out there, because like all of our clients just keep coming in with this misinformation, and it's frustrating. And so that was like really the the why, where we all were just like, man, we need to do something about this, and let's use this as sort of a megaphone. This podcast is a megaphone to drive business towards what we were all working on at the time, and we just thought of it was really just going to be sort of a marketing tool for us to get a little bit more exposure. We didn't know at the time that it was going to become like as big as it did. And so that was kind of exciting, for me, because it was humbling in that I was pursuing all these other things too. I had an invention that I was creating, and I had my hands in a lot of different projects at the time, and it quickly realized how powerful Mind Pump was becoming, and started to put more eggs in that direction. And thankfully I did, because we definitely found it, like with business, it's always about timing, and then it's about it's about your why, and if it's resonating with people. And that's exactly what was happening. I mean, we got on What's Hot like almost within the first week that we were up, and our first podcast was terrible, so it had to be the subject that we're putting out. So I don't know. I mean, there was a little bit of chemistry between us, but they were awful, and I apologize to everybody for those first 100 or so that we put out. So man. I mean, it's
no, you guys are great. You guys are great. You could totally hear and feel how you guys gel with each other, and there's enough back and forth. And when you were saying you guys are like the same people, but you definitely each bring something specifically different. The thing that I would love to hear is, what are like the best or the most heated type of arguments? Because you don't always agree with everybody. There's always like, well, I'm kind of more on this side. And, fundamentally, a lot of things, there's a lot of agreeing with it, but like slightly different spin. But I would love to that would be an awesome audio clip type of montage of the best arguments. Like, no frickin' way, man, I totally disagree with you.
Yeah. I mean, we've had arguments on air. Those were few and far between, but really it's off air where we have our most heated discussions, and those are really more business related than they are fitness and health related. And it's interesting because we do have all different backgrounds, like in different interests and pursuits, but the driving force behind them is to seek out what really is true. And so I think that because that's sort of the underlying motivation behind what we're all discussing, we all kind of end up listening to the other argument, and then whatever ends up kind of coming, the cream kind of rises in that conversation of what kind of stands out, that has more weight. And so we tend to then change our views in our minds around that. I think that, so for instance, I have a background more in performance and in sports training and mobility and like movement practices, where Sal and Adam both have more experience with actually training people to get up on stage. And then also, like, Adam was a physique competitor professionally, and just kind of developed and built himself up to be that. So he has that firsthand experience in that process, and so he talks a lot about that on the show, and like how to really improve your aesthetics. But here's the steps and the practices that you can do that won't lead towards eating dysfunction and things at the end of it. And there is a healthier way to approach it. And and Sal brings a lot of background knowledge with a holistic approach and really treating the body with healthy practices from within, and then being a healthier person in general will aesthetically make you look better, and also will help you pursue more performance benefits. And so, like, looking at gut health and looking at sleep and lots of these functional medicine type approaches. He's got some background in that, having a wellness type facility. So it's different lenses that we're all kind of coming in with, but at the end of the day, it's interesting because even if I talk about something where, I want to gain a PR for performance reasons and whether or not like certain exercises translate well, to the field versus, making my body like building a certain and developing a muscle group so it's larger and I, have this aesthetic balanced look to myself. It depends on the topic. So, we might have a round robin discussion of like the hierarchy of what exercises hold the most weight within different pursuits. And so that process has led us towards creating more programs and that fit specifically towards different pursuits. And so our arguments are actually productive in that, consider this. If I'm trying to pursue these, more performance gains, I have to look at the kinetic chain and see where any, breaks in the links are and what we need to address. And so that's all movement practices. And we have to really dive into, joint function. And we kind of breezed right over that whole process. So that's a big thing for me that, I've been trying to voice on the show and to get people to wrap their brain around because, your average person is going to go to the gym and they just want to look better, feel better, and just kind of go through the process of doing exercises in order to shed weight or, have like more defined muscles, which is great. Like that's kind of a surface way in. However, I personally try, I feel like it's almost a mission of mine to then also add on to that the longevity aspect of to be able to sustain this look and to be able to enjoy, the process of it. Like let's reinforce these joints and let's get them to move and operate properly and get you to establish better patterns while you're going along the path of that pursuit. So you have longevity with that. So this becomes a lifestyle thing, and it's not just like a crash. Like I'm really trying hard this year. Like I'm going to do this and lose this weight. And, it's the hustle of it that is great, initial motivation, but let's be more practical and let's be reasonable about this so that way it's sustainable. So I guess, underlying wise, like there's a lot of the mobility and the practices and the things that, most programs won't have is something that I'm really like passionate about including.
I'm a huge advocate of flexibility, mobility as well when it comes to training. I'll call it a light background in competitive powerlifting and football and things like that. So it was a lot of like explosive power movements. But as what I found was as I've aged, it's more important for me to be able to be, flexible and be able to balance, tie my shoes, play, run and play with my kids a bit more than be able to, deadlift a certain amount of weight, And I feel like what you were just describing becomes much more applicable to I love the term sustainability, as you're sustaining that activity level for your life. So when you say it's your mission, as you're working with your personal clients that you're training, is that something you're kind of ingraining into their programs?
Oh, absolutely. That was huge for me. Like the entire assessment process of when I first meet somebody was crucial. That was the sauce that I definitely made sure that I arranged the entire programming around that initial impression that I got with how they moved, the quality of things that they're presenting, like with movement, and then what I could do to really just intervene and help them to move better, to relieve pain, and just establish better practices. Because now that's something that's a foundation that I can work off of, and so it wasn't really that hard of a sell. And I know a lot of trainers will avoid some of the mundane aspects of better mobility practices and to really take their time to not just to fix, but really just keep honing in on better practices for them to, to really address those specific issues. I feel like we breeze past that a lot of times. Like we might just do that to wow them. Like, hey, I know a lot about anatomy and physiology, and I could tell you like why your joints are behaving this way, but then that becomes the unsexy part of training that people just are like, okay, well, that was great. Now let's throw that out and get to the crazy hard, fucking workouts that are going to make Instagram.
Exactly. And
it's tempting because you want to keep the client entertained. You want to keep them coming back to the workouts and feel like they accomplished something. And I was guilty of that for a while. In the beginning of my career, was trying to kind of wow clients and show them a really badass workout that they felt sweaty and sore from. I mean, that was like the two metrics that were really like that was something that I leaned on kind of hard. And I know I've seen this a lot with young trainers. But as I grew into my career, like further, you just realize that pain and just proper movement, it's something where, people will come back because they have things going on for their body instead of going to physical therapy, instead of going to, a chiropractor. And, yes, those things, are great for intervention when it's necessary, but there's just better movement practices that you can do on your own to prevent all these things. So that was a huge part of programming with my clients, just to make sure that their body felt good and everything was moving properly. So then, yes, we did get to the point where the workout started to intensify, and then the results just happened as we were going through the process, and that wasn't like the driving force behind we were always pursuing aesthetic goals along with performance goals, but it became secondary to making these lifestyle changes and these behavior changes by reiterating better movement and the quality of how they were performing these exercises. So I put a lot more weight on that than say your average trainer that was just trying to wow them and entertain them through like intense, crazy workouts. Like I started to entertain them by just trying to have personality and make sure they were having a good time and converse with them and joke with them and get real personal as we got along, because it's an intimate experience. Like you're there with them a few times a week, and it's a one-on-one interaction, and it's something that I tried to make sure like my clients were having a good time and it was something they really enjoyed.
Yeah, like you're just describing it, and if you truly care about them, which I guess if you want to be a successful trainer, you're going to care about your clients, and you're going to want to see them progress in the appropriate manner where they're not band-aiding something with bad technique, or even just using something to mask something else, like what you're talking about in terms of mobility or doing proper techniques and movements, where you can just kind of try to blast through and now you can run a mile faster than you did before, as opposed to kind of doing it with the proper slower methods to get them there, which would then enable them to continue on beyond the initial goal of maybe losing 10 pounds or 20 pounds or whatever it may be.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm a movement geek. Like I really do like appreciate quality movement. And we had a guy on that I don't even know if we released it yet, but he's a sports scientist, and he described it as it's really like the aesthetics of movement. So that's something that for me, I've just always seen that within the athletic realm, within just watching people do activities. Like that's something I paid attention to, and that was something that I tried to convey that to my clients and just show them that like what that does for somebody when they're really paying attention to the quality of their movement. And then as a byproduct, their bodies change and look awesome as a result. So, I mean, it's kind of killing two birds with one stone at that point, addressing like exercises and looking at it from a quality perspective, because, down the road, if we're not addressing these things like from the very get-go, they're just gonna exaggerate and become more of a problem to where, like earlier in my career, this is where I kind of kicked myself, in the ass for not addressing certain things, because then, you get to a certain point where like we're losing weight and building muscle, but that dysfunction, it's exaggerating. It's becoming more pronounced, and so this is something that like I would see that within our training sessions and just be irritated with myself that I didn't spend the time to really get them to buy into helping that, because that was going to become a problem, and it did. It became something that, okay, well, now we have to regress back and address, because now it's becoming a pain. It's becoming something that's like we can't keep adding load to this situation, because it's becoming a potential danger of injury. So like it's doing the unsexy stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, for me, you just have to get to a point where like that's like it doesn't matter. Like you have to be sort of stick to your guns and know that you're the professional, that this is what's best for you, and your clients will appreciate that from you, and that's what they're looking from you. They have their own ideas of what they want to experience, and you do want to acknowledge it, but to be a real true professional, that's something that requires that kind of confidence and that knowledge that you are a benefit, like what you're teaching them is really going to benefit them long term.
Absolutely. So it's not all workouts are battle ropes and I don't know, whatever else is really trendy and getting posted ass shots on Instagram.
Yeah, man. I mean that whole culture. And here's the thing, man. Like it works. Like that, you get attention, and people respond to that, and they respond to, they see the biggest guy in the gym, and they think that they got all the answers, and that all is going to always be there, because people's first impression of fitness is from magazines, and it's from this cultural standard of like where they want their body to be. Not like I totally get it. Like I want my body to look good. Like that's something is universal, but that's these types of things are even more exaggerated now on Instagram, and it's, to us, that's sort of another thing that like we feel compelled to really point these things out to people, that this isn't the most healthy individual, or like this may look amazing, but what they're saying is completely wrong in terms of like you being able to apply that as just an average person, or just highlighting certain things of like even better practices of what kind of information to present people. So we even challenge other fitness influential people out there, and like other professionals in the field, if we feel like they're even if their information has science backing them, is it the right message to present to somebody who's just looking at it? I mean, is that really what you want? Is that really what's going to change the behavior of somebody versus just confuse them? And so a lot of that, like we're looking at the Instagram, the YouTube, and Facebook, and all the social media platforms. Like, what kind of information are you putting out there, and is that something that we would get behind? Because again, like it's the misinformation war. Like it's this thing that we see is always a potential problem for your average person to get really swayed and confused, because people are motivated based off of marketing initiatives, based off of like, this is something that is going to benefit my business, or my methods are better than your methods. My diet is better than your diet. And, that's the sort of world we live in. Like, you're getting pulled in all kinds of different directions, and we're just trying to make sense of it for your average person. And so Instagram is I'm going to go and say it's a clusterfuck. It's something that we're trying to shine a little bit of light in a direction where it's like, okay, like what is true, and how can we filter this down and figure out, like, okay, maybe there is some truth in that, but like, this part is off. And it's interesting because a lot of these influencers, they better be nervous, because after the Fire Festival and after a lot of these like promotional things that people have had problems with, the people are starting to really pay attention to what people are saying and making sure that what they're presenting is quality things, even if it's a product. Like, it's starting to have backlash if it's not something that has any value in people's lives. So I mean, just that, and to me that's exciting, because I feel like the consumer needs to feel like they're empowered and feel like that they can find people that have vetted information, and there is quality information out there, and they don't have to sift through all that bullshit like so much.
Absolutely. It's just like you said, it's the sexiness attracts people, the shiny object, and then after a couple of minutes, people are, you dig in and you poke, and I think you realize, like, hey, that's not as cool as I thought it was. That's really, surface pretty, but content weak. And you're seeing some of that stuff, especially with Instagram, like, because you'll see somebody will post something, and maybe, their first 5 or 6 posts, you're like, oh, that's kind of interesting stuff. But then after, 2-3 weeks, maybe a month or two, you're realizing this is garbage. This is just something. It's just like the shiny object at the side of the road. You want to walk over and you look at it, and it's, oh, this is just crap. I don't want this. It's a funny time to see this stuff happen.
Yeah, it's an interesting landscape out there, and I'm pretty optimistic though. Like, I do feel like the cream will rise to the top, and people that are actually putting good information out there will become more popular. But it's still going to be competitive. Just our natural impulses and our attraction. It's a very powerful thing for your average person, and so for the initial impression, sexiness and intense and like heroic looking things are always going to win, and so we try and have fun with that. And so I think that's the other kind of element with the show is like fitness is so heavy on the ego. And everybody out there is very much trying to just present their best form, their best physique, their best everything, and it's not reality. And I think that there's already a movement kind of starting with authenticity, and that's one of our core values, is just to be as authentic as we possibly can. When we're doing well, when we're not doing well, like when we're wrong on a subject matter, we address it. Like that's something that we feel we have to do in order to maintain that level of transparency with our audience, and make sure that they can trust that we're not perfect, and obviously we don't have all the answers, but we're seeking that, and we're trying to bring people on the show to help expand upon that knowledge base, and to bring value to our audience, so they can count on us. If we don't know it, we're going to go get somebody that's like super qualified in that area and bring them on, and there's no ego in that for us. Like, we feel like that's what we want. We want to learn more. We want to have our thoughts changed. If if that's what needs to happen. So I feel like I want to see more of that out of, fitness and health professionals, and to be not always be the man, not always be the woman. Like that's like there's times where you can kind of step back and be humbled and realize that your research has been super valuable, and you've done a lot of hard work in that, but maybe there's some other points to consider, and to be open to those points.
Absolutely. It's such a complex landscape, and it's changing all the time. And I think you hit on it before, is you really want to build that trust, because as part of that mass audience, that's what we want, is we want somebody who doesn't necessarily know all the answers, but somebody that you can trust to help guide in the right direction. And that's the critical piece to it.
Yeah, and I really hope that we become that,
Oh, absolutely. Totally, you are. And I just want to keep an eye on the clock here. I want to be conscious of your time, and I don't want to eat up all of your day here. But I did have just a couple more questions, and we can wrap up, and I can let you get on with the rest of your day. Let's see. We were talking, I know one of my favorite little series of episodes or shows was the ones leading up to and during your most recent contest. So I was curious that if you guys have been kicking around another idea for what's next in terms of a challenge for each other or something along those lines.
Yeah, no, we all have a lot of fun with that. And it's kind of funny because I feel like at the beginning of our episodes, like that was something that we just decided, let's have fun with this. And I became sort of the guinea pig with that process. With this transformation, real time with the episodes. Like I was going to talk about the experience, and then we've tried to kind of keep including that element, because I feel like people can relate, and also we can kind of show our own struggles a bit more on the podcast. So yeah, there's definitely room for more competitions amongst the three of us. Plus, we all just love talking shit. Like we just like talking shit to each other. It's part of my favorite part of the show. Like they can handle it. I can handle it. It's a unique thing apparently. Like I've kind of grew up around a bunch of guys that have been just brutal. Like if you're wearing a certain color shirt, if you have anything on your face, like you're just gonna get ridiculed all day. And, that just became something that's like, it's part of my sense of humor. It's part of their sense of humor. And we have fun with it. And so that's, like we've thought about a few different competitions. I'm kicking around the idea of competing, in one of those like Spartan, Tough Mudder kind of races, and training for that. Adam was actually still working on his swimming and called out Ben Greenfield to kind of race him, and they're working on something like that. Sal, I don't know. I think he's a tough sell on the competition side of things. Other than we did that, like you mentioned, our recent one where we were all trying to lose body fat and kind of compare and contrast. That with like lean muscle gain, and Doug, just smashed all of us. So there you go. He was the sleeper there. It just came out of nowhere and just upended the three fitness guys. So yeah, man, I really enjoy the competitive side that we all share. So we haven't really like determined our next competition completely, but I'm going to make sure and bring that up, because that's a fun element of the show for sure.
Absolutely. That was great. And I love being able to kind of track along with the progress. And it's not just here's the before and the after. It's all of the during that makes it kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
No, I'm going to make sure and bring that up for sure.
All right. Okay. Well, I wanna let you go here, Justin. Thank you so much for taking time to come onto the show. And again, Mind Pump on podcast everywhere you go to find your podcast. It's an awesome show. Thank you so much. Is there anything you want to plug before we wrap up?
Yeah. If if you guys are new to Mind Pump and you just want some free information we put out there, you can go to mindpumpfree.com, and we have a lot of resources out there, a lot of guides to just kind of get you up and running. What's been really awesome is our 30 days of coaching, and so if you just go to our website, it's mindpumpmedia.com, and what we've put on there is like 30 days where it's just like, it's almost like couch to get back to the gym. Like it's like best practices, and it's a daily coaching. If we were to take you on as a client, it's like these first initial things we're trying to teach, a new client. And so there's nutrition information, there's fitness information, and like actual workouts that that we present in our 30 days of free coaching. So if you just sign up for that, that's a great experience. So I'll just go ahead and throw that out there, and then any of our Instagrams where we live and answer questions all day. So Mind Pump, at Mind Pump Justin, at Mind Pump Sal, at Mind Pump Adam, and you can follow one of us there.
All right. Well, thanks again, Justin. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Hey, man, I appreciate you having me on.